exact area nearly 35 years ago when hunters discovered Lisa's body lying underneath this tree. We're looking into the strangulation homicide of Lisa Marie Wingo, 24 years old. This was back in January of 1989. First off, how did you first come across this case? I know that she was reported missing by her roommate, but at that point, who was called?
So the roommate called the local police department. It was one of the valley agencies down here where they lived. She was supposed to go to work. She didn't show up for work. She didn't show up back at the house.
At the time of her going missing, she was estranged from her husband, and so she's a single mother of a 1-year-old, gainfully employed, sharing her apartment with a roommate. She lived in Phoenix and then took the buses to her workplace in Glendale. She had no personal transportation, and it was determined that she had not been on those buses that morning. And so then by her not coming home that night, everybody knew something was up because that was unlike Lisa. And so that's when the missing persons report got submitted.
Hunters found her out in the Castle Hot Springs area, north of Lake Pleasant, about 4
let's
or
pull
5
up the
days.
map here. We can take a look at the map and talk me through where that area is.
So the area she was found is out in what we call the Castle Hot Springs area, Yavapai County. So it's north of Lake Pleasant, a little bit east of Wickenburg, essentially. So in between, almost halfway in between I-17 and Wickenburg, and like I said, about several miles north of Lake Pleasant. There was a group of folks out there hunting. I believe it was quail hunting, and they found her laying in the desert, partially clothed and deceased. They called us, and that's Yavapai County where she was found. So our patrol deputies responded, confirmed that that's what we were dealing with, and then our detectives went out and started that case.
She was just found laying on her stomach with her arms underneath that tree. So somebody had just taken her out there and left her. She went missing on Monday and wasn't found until Saturday, so something happened for a period of time there. She had some abrasions about her, so there was some violence beyond the strangulation. So I don't think she went without putting up a fight. Somewhere down in that time frame, she put up some kind of a fight.
Back then in 1989, it wasn't as developed, that area yet, right?
Correct. There's a resort out there now. The resort had been shuttered for quite a while during that time. But, there's not a whole lot out there.
To go to that particular spot, someone more than likely knew where they were going. They either frequented the lake or frequented it as a hunter, or, they were familiar camping, something. They were familiar with that area, is my belief. It's not a road that you just drive up because you want to throw a body out.
Now, I know Lisa would typically go to work by bus, but she was often known to be carefree, so she could have gotten in the car with somebody that she didn't know.
We know that Lisa, by everyone's admission, had no hesitancy to hitchhike, get in a vehicle with someone, whether it was a stranger or a known person. So the known people that had given her rides in the past were all spoken to once we had a name. So named rides were interviewed. may not have been a stranger to her, but it was a stranger to those who knew her because it was a name that wasn't given to us. That is our only thinking, is that she got in a vehicle with someone and presumably for a nice ride to work, and that went sideways. Unfortunately, back in that day, Lisa could have been anyone, because back in 1989, we didn't think the way we think now about safety and the bad guys.
How has that interview process gone over the years? Because I know not only then you talk to some people, but you're continuing to talk to people to see if they can tell you anything new.
She had a pretty big circle. And so we interviewed everybody we could identify in that circle back in '89. Again in 2008, we redid some of those interviews. We traveled to Vermont and I believe Kentucky to get DNA from persons of interest in this case, and that didn't pan out.
In the initial stages, they talked to several, maybe 10, 12, 15 different ones that they talked to. Friends, associates. I personally have talked to a couple of different folks and interviewed them and got some value out of that, which led to more testing. Unfortunately, it didn't resolve the case, but you go where it leads you until it stops leading you. So there's still other people out there that we want to talk to. Getting cooperation sometimes is what you wait on.
So we recently sent some more DNA into a lab to have genealogy done on that, and we're hoping that that will get us closer to a suspect.
Has that evidence come back yet, the DNA results?
Has not come back yet. It's been confirmed that there is a usable profile, so now it's just a matter of that genealogist sitting there and looking at the charts and the alleles and figuring out who this is most closely related to. So that can take some time, depending on how close they can get to the actual suspect. The other thing with this case is because she did have fairly active social life, the DNA may not be as conclusive in this case as it could be in some others.
We know that testing back in 1989 was much different than testing when I took over in 2017. And even today, they've improved upon those testing capabilities. And so that was my focus, was getting in on the testing.
So we're really hoping that people who were around, Phoenix, Glendale area in 1989 that may have known her, may have seen her at the time, that maybe as time has passed, they want to talk about something that they saw or heard. And it doesn't have to be that they were given a confession, but maybe they saw somebody acting strange around that time.
Right.
And that may be somebody that we haven't looked at before, and so we want to know about that and get that investigated, because she was a wife, she was a mom, she was a daughter, and we'd like to get those answers for her family.
Her father was initially involved with back in 1989, whenever this was ongoing, and he cooperated and provided some documentation of hers that really had no bearing on the case, but he decided to share that with the investigators at that time. Her mother was back in Illinois. Lisa went to school in Illinois, at her high school, and she'd come out here to visit with her dad, spend some time with her dad, I believe a summer, one of those separate broken home things, and decided to stay. Evidently, she liked what was out here.
One key piece of evidence was hair that was found on her clothing. How has that helped over the years in finding out who that could possibly be?
Well, without going into specifics, it narrows it down for us. Unfortunately, it hasn't solved the case yet, but the nature of hair, it's transient, more transient than DNA. And so that's a pretty vital piece of evidence.
Getting in on the testing is not just what I want to do or what YCSO wants to do. We have to also coordinate with our testing partner, which is the DPS, Arizona DPS Labs. here in the state. And so reaching out to them, and some of that takes time, so you just kind of wait and submit and hope that it leads you somewhere. We keep hoping, until that last little, and even if we can't solve it and it goes back on the shelf, you always hope that technology will change or that someone's heart will change, so that you can pull it back off of the shelf and dig into it again, because we don't give up. We just have to wait until something comes that gives us an opportunity or a route to go down. Sometimes you exhaust all those routes and you have to wait, unfortunately, 35 years.
Looking at this case, how difficult is it in your eyes, compared to others?
This one's pretty difficult. Doesn't mean we're going to stop trying. In fact, that's why we're here talking about it today. We're still working on it. But this is a difficult one because of those relationships, because of that lifestyle. It just expands your pool of suspects, and it's challenging. I mean, these are challenging in general, but when you have the more people you have out there, the more challenging it gets.
Many times you're able to narrow down who you think might have been involved just based on the location and their lifestyle. And with Lisa's, and especially this one with the hitchhiking, it opens it up to way too many. Somewhere they've got to grow a conscience, you would hope, and have said something to someone or come forward anonymously to law enforcement, but that's not the case. So you have to wonder if there's been more. I think they're probably still somewhere in Arizona. I think it's an environmental area that they like, the environment, the seasons, etc. So I think they're probably still local, assuming they're still alive, would be my guess. And that's purely a guess. It doesn't come up with any data.
I know her husband, like we talked about, had served some prison time, and he was known to be somewhat of a violent person. Was he a person of interest?
He was a person of interest at one point. I believe we feel fairly confident that he can be eliminated, but until we get the answer, we don't know for sure.
He spoke with the original detectives whenever they informed him of her being deceased, and then they had another interview with him later on. I haven't been able to have an interview with him due to lack of contact information.
There was also a person that was looked into who was convicted in another state of a similar situation. I believe sexual assault, attempted murder, and served his time and came out. Is he still person of interest in this?
He was one of the people we collected DNA from, and that DNA didn't come back to him. Now, that doesn't mean that we can eliminate him as a suspect, but yeah, he had a very similar case. Well, a lady that was similar in appearance to Lisa. It was a very violent assault. We believe, and the authorities in Vermont believe, that he left that woman for dead, and she was able to survive and get to a highway and get help. So there's some similarities there.
We have not narrowed our focus to random or friend. It's still wide open. We're hoping that the DNA will help us narrow that gap.
I know one of the latest things on this case is a video of the first birthday of Lisa's daughter. Mm-hmm. And most recently, one of the detectives in the case brought that video and showed it to her. So hopefully she would be able to identify some of the people that were in that video and see if they could find anything out that way. For you to know that this daughter, grew up without a mother and is having to go through this, how difficult is that?
That's why we do what we do, is to try and help those people. And, I can't imagine. I couldn't imagine growing up without my parents. And heart breaks for that little girl who's now not a little girl.
Her daughter has 3 children who never knew their biological grandmother, so she did not deserve the demise that she got.
Thank you for watching Arizona's Coldest Cases, an ABC15 true crime series where we team up with local law enforcement, bringing awareness to the victims and their families still awaiting justice. Each episode breaks down a single case, giving you a timeline of the investigation from where things started to where things stand now. You can watch episodes on ABC15.com, the ABC15 mobile app, Roku, YouTube, or any of your other favorite streaming devices.